All right, and we are live. Hello and welcome to Developer Insights. I'm David.
And I'm Justin.
Together we are the leads on game development and design here at Codename.
Not only that, but we're also the founders.
We're going to be your hosts for this episode and for every episode.
Unless we're not.
Can't argue with that.
Today is our 14th episode.
Wait, what? I'm having deja vu. Wasn't last week our 14th episode?
Well, this is actually our 14th episode. Last week it was a joke in our intro.
Did anyone hear the intro?
We are here to answer your development and design questions about Idle Champions, and if you ask us about other things or some of our other games, we might be able to answer those too.
And if you don't ask any questions, you will have to suffer through Justin's one-man reenactment of last week's stream intro.
It'd be pretty easy since we were muted.
I would never.
I see that we're already starting to get some questions. Hooray!
And as always, we pulled some questions forward from last week, shows questions that we didn't get to, although we did try to get to all of them last week, actually, but we've got a few, as well as we have a few items that we've tagged that are being looked at by the development team. So let's just hop over to that.
Yeah, I can get started. We had some of these highlighted things that we highlighted from questions last week. One of them is actually from 2 weeks ago. Someone was asking if Eliwick's card odds change when a beneficial card is already drawn. And I did look into this and confirmed it with the developer who implemented Eliwick that yes, the card that you currently have is removed from the odds, and so that can affect the remaining card odds proportionally, which means basically if there was like a 25% chance to draw the current card, then that 25% chance gets redistributed proportionally across the other odds. So it will result in a slightly higher than displayed chance to draw some of those negative cards, but over time it should kind of even out. What else do we have here? People were asking about epic purchases freezing if you made them after you had the game open for a while. We confirmed that this does in fact occur, but it doesn't affect you actually getting the items. You'll still get the items. There's a temporary workaround, which is to reload the game just before you make a purchase, but it's also on Peter's list to look into. Pretty high up on that list, I think.
And that was just the Epic credentials log or timing out on us, right?
Yes, yeah. Yes. There's something with their system where your login is only good for a certain amount of time, and then we need to refresh that. And then there were two other things that we've added to our production meeting for next week, and that's somebody was asking about a toggle to disable the upgrade unlocked boxes that pop up whenever you level up where there's an upgrade. We're going to talk about that, and we're also going to look into where we can put the click damage skins, like the snowball click damage. Someone was asking if that could be added to the gem store, so we will be discussing that in the coming weeks.
Okay. Following that, we do have some updates from last week on fixes. Now, that said, I've been out most of the week, so this list did not grow too large, but we do have two items on here. One of them is the issue that last week we so hastily declared was fixed, which was that when you start a new adventure right around midnight, that it could freeze out, and then you'd come back in the morning to find your party had frozen there, was not in fact fixed. It looks like there were some long-running queries that were causing the time when we were doing was the TimeGate favorites or most popular champions update, which was in fact running quite long. But it looks like there may be some other long-running tasks that are running into that at the same time, such as the nightly backup. Now, I'm sure everyone wants to make sure their characters get backed up every night, but we'll be looking into that and seeing if that in fact is running long. And if those two things collide, that could very well be what was causing that. So we'll keep looking at that. And then we do have an update regarding the familiar dialogue. Previously it was requested, or it's been pointed out that the behavior on that has been peculiar. Like to get the dialogue to close, if you drag the mouse up, it disappears. If you drag it down, it doesn't. So we were looking at adjusting that, and actually what we've ended up doing is we've got a complete rework on that dialogue coming very soon. I'm told potentially in the next build, and that not only updates the close behavior, but we've made the icons larger, we've added pageation, and there's some new filtering options on that as well. So all in all, that should be a better experience. Okay, on to questions.
Yeah, we've got some questions here from last week that we're gonna just quickly answer while we're waiting for more questions to come in. Though we're getting a good amount of them this week. But here's a question from Thenider, or Thenider, or Thenidur, who asks: is it intentional that the collect X amount of gems challenge from loot bags does not progress when background/offline parties do it?
So they're definitely not intentional. And it is on the list of things that we are looking into in the coming weeks because we've got some time dedicated to fixing the offline progress bug. So that one is definitely a bug. So if that happens, certainly let us know, and it will be something we're looking at.
All right, another question here from Babilly G2000, who asks, what does success not true mean?
Right.
Are you going to give a silly answer and then the actual answer?
I was going to start with the actual answer. So oftentimes you may get well, not oftentimes. Hopefully it doesn't happen very frequently, but every now and then you might get a message box that pops up, and it may actually in it say success not true as a result of a call that's gone to the server. And what success not true is actually flagging is that the call successfully reached the server and got back to you, which is different from the call successfully reaching the server, doing what it was supposed to do successfully, and then getting back to you, as well as a case with the call timing out. So we have a couple of different cases that we're covering there. So for example, if the game tries to contact the server and it can't reach the server, after a certain period of the time, you might get a request timed out. But this is a case where the call reaches the server says, whatever you're trying to do, you can't do that. But it does actually make a full round trip and gets back. So the success not true means whatever was trying to happen, the server did not want to do it. Opposite to that is that success is true is a flag on things that means that it reached the server and successfully completed whatever it was doing. And we use that as a flag internal to calls to know that, okay, we've got the call succeeded, we have proper data, and now we can carry on with whatever action was going on. Is that what you were going to interject?
No, I was going to say, I think that oftentimes success not true often follows up a retrying request, because sort of one of the cases that can cause it is if it makes a call to the server processes it all successfully and responds, but then that response doesn't make it back to you, and so your client tries again. And then when the server receives your second attempt, it's like, wait a minute, I just did this. I'm not going to do it again. And it returns a success false. So that is probably the most common situation that can cause that.
Yeah, certainly. Okay. Yeah, it's more likely we see that more on in development than people will be seeing it live. But
hopefully.
We have a question here for you, Justin, from Biohazard 1210. And Biohazard is asking, is there any possibility to have some sort of pity timer for gold chest feats? It seems weird that you can spend enough gems to buy one of the 50k feats and not get any in the chest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we got this question quite a bit when we first rolled out feats with feats and chests and stuff like that. And at the time, I believe we were saying we didn't really have any plans for a pity timer. That's kind of where we're still at, is that we don't really have any plans for a pity timer. But there are, it's your odds to get a feat are kind of proportional to how many. Actually, no, they're not. It's just a flat chance. So, yeah, I don't think we have any plans to do that right now. It all kind of evens out. Like, you can get unlucky, but you can also get really lucky with feats in chests. So it's possible to, go 100 chests without getting them. It's also possible to get 5 or 6 in 25 chests. So it all evens out over a long enough period of time, and there's not really any plans to add a pity timer right now, but it could still happen in the future. Just no plans right now. Here's a question having to do with our recent portrait update from Lord Javax, who asks, are the new portraits going to reflect the current skins the heroes are using in the future? For instance, Briv is not in a panda suit in his portrait, even though I have him in that skin. Yeah.
So that one is, I guess, so more people will be seeing the new portraits now because we rolled those out as an option last week, which I'm going to put quotes around as an option. Yes, you can switch it back if they're not to your preference. But from the get-go, when we started producing those portraits, which we produced for the console version of the game, one of the decisions that we made around them was not to do the skin portraits. And this is because they are a unique art asset, and they do represent a not insignificant amount of work from an individual artist when they're putting them in. So just from a production standpoint, it was decided we wouldn't do those for each of the skins, simply because it just adds a significant extra amount of time. So we will not be doing that. There's no plans to do that in the future, and the longer we wait, the less likely that would become as one of those things where if it was ever a case of like, oh, you know what, we should have those. The backlog on that would be huge at this point. So I really don't see that being a thing that could happen. Yeah. Next question here is from All That Jazz. All That Jazz would like to know, will Legendary replace Golden Epic, or will your Golden Epic get turned into a shiny Legendary?
Yeah, so if you convert a Golden Epic or a shiny Epic into a Legendary, it will retain that Golden or shiny status. So it'll be either a Golden Legendary or a shiny Legendary, depending on what it was before it got converted. But we will definitely have more information on the Legendary stuff pretty soon, I would hope. We're getting closer and closer to the release date target. So yes.
Yeah. All right. Definitely. Moving into the new questions, and we got one here. First question out of the gate from Garwar. Quick on the button.
Who's that?
Garwar would like to know, an uncommon potion of specialization costs 5,000 patron currency, which is the same price as a patron chest and 2.5 times the price of an epic potion. Is there a balance reason for these to cost so much, or did someone accidentally add an extra 0 to the end of the price?
So initially, right when we were releasing the patron stuff, it was pretty soon after the specialization potions got added to the game. And so I think I balanced it that way because I wasn't really sure how powerful the specialization potions were going to be. And now I think that we're a little bit more mature into the game. I think it's possible that we could certainly reduce the price by a little bit. But I don't want to go crazy with that. I don't want to take a 0 off, for example. Just in case there's some sort of fancy way of using those to kind of buff yourself. I know we've had things like that in the past where you can like use a specialization potion to like, there was some sort of bug where you could like use it to buff up something, and each time you used it, that it got bigger and bigger, and I don't know. So yes, we can certainly take a look at that. It's probably not going to get significantly cheaper in there because we do want those specialization potions to be a little bit special.
Okay. Next question is from Pentriller. I got that right. Pentriller is asking, the math in the game is everywhere and quickly turns into a complex mess of digits once things stack, overlap, and multiply on the fly. Do you design, brackets, the math visually, like in distances, curves, and postposition or propositions?
I think that's proportions.
Okay, there we go. That makes sense. Or proportions, yes. To fill in algebra to make a character work, or just put it all together in your head and magic pops out.
I like to think that magic pops out of my head. That's kind of cool. But no, we use a couple of in-house tools that sort of give us an idea of what the balance of a champion should be. And then depending on sort of the starting cost of them, the rate at which their cost goes up, and some other factors, we can fill in upgrades and whatnot to try and get it to match that sort of curve that is in there as closely as possible. And that's sort of the way that we balance all of our champions on the first pass. Part of that is just filling in those numbers. Another part of that is trying to kind of average out or estimate the efficacy of a given buff. There's some upgrades that aren't super simple, like global damage ×2 or plus 100% is really easy to balance because we know this is just going to make your damage be twice as high. But there's other buffs, ones like, hey, plus 100% damage for each monster attacking your tank. It's like we can't really be sure what that value is going to be. We know the kind of range that value is going to be in, And so when we're balancing it, we're trying to match it to that curve. We use kind of an average of where we think it's going to be, in general, which means there are cases where it might be lower, there's cases where it might be higher. And that allows us to create sort of niche situations where a given champion could be more powerful in a certain situation or less powerful in another certain situation, which I think makes formation building and all that a lot more interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Now here's a question that's we'll have to interpret to some degree. This is a question from Cassius335, and Cassius asks, "Nerds, why?" So I mean,
calling us nerds and just asking in general why.
All right, looking at the title of the show, they're like, why?
What are these nerds things people are talking? Yeah, so the nerds champion in the game. Why? Because it was a cool opportunity to work with the candy, to work with wizards, and to do something kind of unexpected in the game. So I kind of like how the champion turned out. I think it's really interesting. Nope. Hi, Peter. I think it's a really interesting champion, and I like some of the mechanics that we put in there, and it's just fun.
Yeah. I mean, we try our best not to take ourselves and the game too seriously. So a little opportunity for something fun. And I know when we first saw it, it was like, wait, what? They want us to do what?
I was like, what?
But then it was like, oh, cool. We can make it work.
Yeah. Here's a question here from NuttyBear _ to differentiate them from the regular NuttyBear. It says, there was a poor Idle Champs player asking if there were any plans to translate the game into Turkish so they could understand the game's menu. Any plans?
I think Turkish is one of the languages that is not currently on the list of 6 languages that we're translating to.
Turkish is on it, sorry.
No.
Yeah, we are planning to translate the game into
planning
a couple
is
of other
maybe
languages.
deep into the process of yeah.
We are 90% of the way through translating the game into some other languages. I don't think Turkish is on there though.
No.
And
and
I
as
don't
far
actually have the full list in front of me.
yeah, and certainly we're picking the languages from the list to be to cover the largest geos. So I'm not sure. I actually don't have the information as sort of how large the Turkish would be, but that would.
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind is that this is a very, very text-heavy game with all of the cinematics and the quest text and all that stuff. I think I can't remember how many hundreds of thousands of words it was, but
it was like 450,000. It was silly.
And that was like a year ago.
Yeah.
So it's not a very cheap endeavor to translate it to each language. So we're being very careful about which ones we do.
The word is inexpensive, Justin, not inexpensive.
It's very
we don't use the word. Anyway, all right, next question here from Super Fluffy Kitty, whose name I enjoy, but who's asking so many questions today. And Super Fluffy Kitty is asking, why have nerds been statted in such a way that they cannot be used for any patron?
So this is, I knew we were going to get this question because this is it was a very intentional design choice to kind of try and make the nerds a little bit less useful than we could have made them. And the main reason for that is the promotion's only available in, I think, just the US. And so it might be more challenging for our players outside the US, which is not an insignificant number of people, to get the Nerds champion, at least while the promotion's going. And so we didn't want to create a situation where we accidentally released this really, really good champion who was really useful in all of these amazing situations and have the meta shift. So you have to have Nerds every single time, for every patron and every variant, or else you're just going to fall behind. So we very intentionally kind of left them a little bit lacking in some ways. And that is something that we can maybe adjust over time. There are plans to add the Nerds champion to the gem shop, I think, once the promotion is over, but that's several months away as far as I know. So yeah.
Yeah, no, the promotion runs for quite a while. Okay. Next question here is from Garwar, and Garwar would like to know how we feel the testing is going on Trials of Mount Teomat.
Yeah, so I think the testing is going quite well. It has revealed a couple of things that I will need to nerf before launch. But in general, I think we've managed to do several run-throughs of the systems with both our internal teams and some beta testers. Thanks, beta testers. And so I think we're getting very, very close to the point where we're probably going to close down the testing, or the beta testing, and just get everything ready, because we're getting pretty darn close to release. I don't think we've actually given a date yet, but we're getting pretty darn close.
Yep, for sure.
That's what's happening.
Yep.
Let's see. Reading through the questions. Here's a question from Biocron, who asks, is it possible to have the formations save the number of familiars instead of specific familiars? If a familiar is inadvertently used in a background party, it will not be loaded into another party, resulting in fewer familiars than expected. Since all familiars do the same, wouldn't it be preferable to just load the number of familiars saved with a formation, even if they are different ones?
So the short answer to this is, well, to the last part, yes, it would definitely be that would definitely be preferable. And this is something that we intend to be addressing in the updates that we're making to the offline progress and Modron stuff that we're working on currently. This is certainly something that's been asked before, and that's certainly the answer. And I'd actually see this question a little further down, another variation on this that I saw earlier. Anyway, someone else is asking a similar question, and the answer is, yeah, that's definitely something we intend to change. There was originally a contention around the idea I placed this specific familiar here, and the idea of any random one was in there. And I do know, just thinking back on at the point at which that was set, I think it had initially been random, and I know someone had said something about the ones that they had specifically wanted not being there. And I believe at the time Mark switched it back, and then we never got around to changing it to the sort of the alternative method, where it's like, try, if it can place one that you have specifically placed there, place that one. And then once it's gone through that and filled them in, fill in the remaining spots with ones that were not specifically placed if they are available. Anyway, so for sure. Okay, it looks like Super Fluffy Kitty's gonna get all their questions answered here. Question here from Super Fluffy Kitty. Can silver patron chests be awarded for completing variants for the first time? Currently, completing variants doesn't get you enough currency to buy many patron chests. I'm 140 plus variants into Strad and barely been able to buy 40 gold chests.
Yeah, I don't think we have any plans to add any additional rewards. It's true that you do have to, like, if you want to buy all of the one-time purchase stuff for each patron, you have to save up quite a bit of currency. It's kind of by design. You do also get enough through the challenges and the free plays and whatnot to get, I think, 2 patron chests per week. So yeah, we don't have any plans to increase that number. I'm decently happy with where that is right now. Obviously, there's stuff that changes sort of as we add more champions to the game. It starts to dilute the gear you get from patron chests, because there's just more and more options for them. And so it may very well be that in a while we need to add more ways to get those patron chests, because you just have more and more champions to try and gear out with them. But for now, I think I'm pretty happy with where that's at. I think that actually relates to Super Fluffy Kitty's next question.
Right. Next question there is, will there be a better way to get gear retired let me start again. Will there be a better way to gear retired champions? Yeah. Let's go with that.
Sure. Yeah, and you mentioned the question here that you can open time gates and buy chests during their events. Yes, which is actually kind of a bug, but yes, you can do that. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to gear older champions. You can also gear them through... not going to answer that call. You can also gear them through time gates, and the aforementioned patron chests will also drop things for them. The chests that you can get from this stream by entering the code that's up there, that also can give you an Electrum chest, which can drop items for any of your event champions. So I think there's a lot of ways to get gear for retired champions, for older champions, for non-current event champions. And so I think right now we're pretty happy with where that's at. As I say, as we move forward, we may want to add more ways to do that because there's just more champions out there. So I think right now the ratio that we have is pretty good, or I'm happy with it at least. Let's do a question here from Jasynth for you, Dave. They ask, why does the font for champion cost shrink as soon as you buy the first level that adds them to the formation?
Does it do that? I mean, maybe it does do that.
I don't know.
I assume
Maybe.
it must be, given that they're asking the question. The fonts on the champion bars are done based on the length of the text, and so it shouldn't change except if the actual the length of the number changes. And so it could very well be that that's changing. And if it's changing in the actual number of the width of the characters there isn't changing, it could possibly be that the first time that's rendered, or that layout is completed, that it is doing it thinking it's a different size than the second time the layout is completed. So it's a bit odd. Generally speaking, that text does get changed just to try and make sure that it fits. I know I played around with that a bit recently when I was doing the slim portraits, because certainly the heuristics we were using on that before no longer work once the boxes are not guaranteed to be a particular proportion. So it shouldn't shrink unless the actual length changes. But yeah, it's in an effort to make sure that text fits inside the box. Yeah. I'd be curious to know if that was happening specifically on the new narrower portraits, or if it's something that had always been going on. Yeah.
Another question here for you from the Low Schwerg, who says, when I have internet issues, the game is reporting the error, which basically renders the software unusable as it lays over the game.
It's a layover. It's a temporary stop of the game.
Is that a known bug?
So it's not a bug per se. The game does require that you have an active connection to the internet for a lot of things, or a lot of features. One of the main one being, of course, saving. But when you complete boss areas, you need to have an active connection. If you want to open a chest, you have to have an active connection. So if you end up in a situation where you've lost internet for a long enough period of time, and during that period of time it's been trying to save, that's likely when you would end up with sort of an error report that's popping up. It shouldn't get stuck, though. Justin, do you think of a case where that would...
I think the thing I've noticed is that if you do have a connection error of some sort, what can happen is they can stack up. So every time it gets one, it just has a new, your connection was interrupted or whatever window. And then when you come back, you basically just have to restart the client, or click through, depending on how long you were gone, click through potentially many of them.
Yeah.
I was actually going to bring this one up in the
that's
in
true.
a production meeting at some point, because it seems like something that'd be pretty simple to fix.
Right. So you're saying if you get it repeatedly over a course of time, so you've left the game open for 8 hours, and you come back and you've lost your connection a number of times, you could have ended up with a handful to a fair amount of boxes all stacked up. Yeah, I have seen that a few times. When the internet goes out. Yeah, I mean, at that point too, it's questionable if you'd be able to proceed from where you were without doing a restart. Yeah, I know that could be a concern. Yeah. At any rate, we could certainly make it was one dialogue without too much finagling, I think. Yeah,
yeah,
we can take a look at that.
Like it should be. It should be easy to make it a little bit easier to mitigate.
Yeah, but certainly you could end up in an unreliable state if you're dropping your internet connection on a regular basis, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question here we have is from Delanian. Any chance of making formations more friendly? It doesn't need to fail because Makos is in a different party. It doesn't need to fail to load familiars when there are 10 perfectly good ones sitting unused.
So I think this is formation loads. Formation loading more friendly? That's how I'm reading it, at least.
Does
So
it
this is very
actually
similar.
fail if... You missing a champion? I would assume that it would. Doesn't it carry on and load the next one?
I thought it carried on if it hit a champion that wasn't there, but it would stop if it tried to load a familiar that wasn't there. In one of those two situations, it just stops and gives up and like throws up its hand and like walks off.
Really? Like if it's missing a familiar, it really does give up?
Yeah.
That's absurd. It shouldn't do that.
I agree.
It should definitely not do that.
That's one of those that's one of those really big low-hanging fruit bugs that I was talking about a couple of weeks ago.
All right, tag that one. Make it yellow.
Tag that one. Dave's going to guarantee that one's fixed by next week.
That's not what the yellow means.
I think I'm going to make it. You know, I'm going to make it yellow, and I'm going to write here. Dave guarantees it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get Dexter on that.
If you want to go back up a few, there's one more that I highlighted there from
the there
fluffiest
is.
kitty.
Super Fluffy Kitty asks, will there be achievements for nerds? Get all 6 pieces of loot, do something with abilities, recruit them, etc.
Yeah, so there won't be the regular event achievements for them, like get their loot, do adventures, etc. But there is already an achievement, I believe, to use their ultimate 100 times. If that's not there, then we need to enable that because it certainly exists in the data. So yes, there's that achievement. There won't be any more, most likely, for them.
Okay. So this question from iCrunk I highlighted this because I was curious if you could make heads or tails of the question.
I looked at it and I'm not sure what they're asking. So maybe iCrunk if you can clarify here. Your question is there a way to make a formation saved in slot 1 have no saved slot and move a saved formation into the slot 1? Currently, it seems that I have to delete slot 1 in order to put a new formation there.
Yeah, I'm not.
So is this like if you already have something saved into quick slot 1 and then you try to save a new formation, you can't save it into quick slot 1. You have to go and put you have to move the one in slot 1 to a different place before you can save over it. I'm just surprised that wouldn't just automatically work.
So it looks like iCrunk is following up in the chat. He says, so I have a save formation in slot 1. Would there be a way for me to click the star to untag it from slot 1 so I can save another formation into slot 1? Can you not click the star for 1 on another formation and then it just becomes that one? I think that was how it was supposed to behave.
I thought that was how it worked as well.
Okay.
Well, let's look into that and we'll see if there's some behavior that's not.
Players in the chat are saying that, yeah, you can click on another formation. Or click the primary star on another formation. Okay. All right. Well, let them chat about that. And if it does remain being an issue, we can take a look at it for sure.
Sure.
All right. Next question here for you, Justin, is from Mike Baldy. Mike is asking, is there anything more you guys can share about legendary items and progression, particularly if there are any sort of existing currencies or other things we should be saving or doing in preparation?
Yeah, so for legendary items and progression, your main source of currency for that's going to come from the Trials of Mount Teomat. The only other thing you're going to want to have in preparation for that is epic items on all of your characters. So yeah, just get those Patron Chests, make sure you're playing the event a lot and getting event chests and gold chests and get as much epic as you can. Because aside from that, you're gonna want to play some Trials of Mount Teomat when it comes out, and get yourself some currency to start upgrading those items. Yep. Let's see here. Here's a question from Shaggy Nitsua, who says, "Been playing for a long time on Congregate and just downloaded via Steam 2 days ago. Is there any way to link the 2 accounts?"
Yeah, so this is a question that we do get fairly frequently, and the general answer to this one is no. We don't support account linking, and this is largely because a lot of the platforms have specific rules about accounts linked across platforms, about items purchased on various accounts, about not transferring player populations from, of course, their platforms to other platforms, which I understand would be something that they would be concerned about. So in general, we don't have any in-game systems for that. In rare edge cases, we will allow transfers if, for some reason you're not able to play on a particular platform anymore, like say you're playing on your iPhone and you switch to Android, then if you can reach out to support and they can help you with that. In the case of going from Congregate to Steam, that's one of those things where we might be able to consider a particular situation, but and especially with Congregate being one of those platforms that is sort of in maintenance mode, broadly speaking. Yeah, so we don't have a way to officially link them. If your circumstances are specific, you can reach out and and support will consider your request. But generally speaking, the answer is no, we do not do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Platforms are very possessive over the players that they that they have.
Well, they work hard to get people on their platforms, and so you can understand why they wouldn't want to.
It's hard.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Anyway. Next question here is from Zelderons.
Hi, Eric.
And Zelderons asks, can we get health share for nerds?
Health share for nerds? Is that like some sort of health care for nerds? No. Yeah, so the nerds do not have a health share item or a health share ability. I don't think there are plans to add one for them. They're kind of a tank-ish. I mean, they're kind of half of sort of all of their, I guess they're 1/6 of all of their various roles. So health share is just something that they didn't get. They're not, yeah. I mean, like I say, they're not super intended to be a big part of the meta. So no plans at the moment to give them a health share. Here's a question from Zelos1, who says, I'm new here, but where's the button to turn back on my old portraits?
And they started with I'm sorry, so I'm going to assume, like us, they're Canadian.
They must be Canadian. Apology accepted.
And I also assume that probably the moment they asked this, chat probably answered it for them, but I didn't catch it. Anyway, if you go into the game settings, either by the leftmost menu item on the top right, or top left, it's leftmost on the top left, and then go to settings. At the bottom of the settings box is an option that says use console portraits, and these are the portraits that were specifically designed for console, which when I added that setting, did occur to me that perhaps that might be not as straightforward if you didn't know in advance that those were for the console. Anyway, we might revisit the description on that.
Alternative, yeah.
Anyway, so that's that option there, or of course you can hit escape to bring up the menu as well. So that's where it is, but I'm also going to guess that the chat probably filled them in on that pretty quickly after they asked that.
I would assume so.
Yeah. All right. So here's a question for you, Justin. Here's a big, difficult question.
Okay.
JFC Fuller asks, what was the thought process behind departing from the normal D&D combat for the exponential system?
Yeah, so, well, we're an idle game, and in idle games, the numbers go up real fast. It's kind of a core part of idle games. With D&D, you get 20 levels to work with. 20 levels aren't enough for us for an idle game. We need more. We need more levels. I always want more levels, more damage. So yeah, I mean, as soon as you kind of break that 20 level limit, the damage numbers just get silly, and idle games are all about sort of things going up and up and up and up, further and further, and getting buffs for those things so they go up and up and up and up more. So really, it's just the type of game that we were developing. Made it very, very clear, very, 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 very early in the process that we needed to kind of bend those rules a little bit. So
yeah, for sure, it's an idle game with D&D in a D&D lore and setting rather than a D&D game in an idle. So I don't know if that makes sense. Anyway, carrying on.
We lean more on the D&D lore. We lean on the kind of some of the D&D ability names and the kind of general idea of them. But we do take quite a bit of liberty with all that stuff.
Okay. Next question here is from Colin Rowlands. And Colin would like to know, would you consider changing the Patron Challenge with a nominated character being top DPS to offer a choice of a few instead? It's painful trying to hamper your formation so that supports or tanks don't overtake the weaker DPS. Isn't that the challenge? That's the challenge.
I mean, I guess there's two answers to this. One is that is kind of the challenge. Like we're intentionally making you have to fiddle with your formation such that you meet the objective. The other side of this is it has been a long time since we've looked at the Patron Challenges, and so it would probably be a good idea to go through and potentially tweak how some of those work. I know players were asking about the ones like have a healer be your top DPS or have like no supports or something in your formation, and look at some of those and how they function, because it can definitely feel, I think, more like a chore to do some of those as opposed to a challenge. And so definitely if things are starting to feel like a chore, we want to switch those up so that they're interesting and fun. And so definitely at some point we will take another look at the Patron Challenges and maybe give that system a once over. Let's get a question in for you here, Dave. We've got one here from Alien Daycare. Oh, that's nice. Who asks, what IDE do you use to develop this game? And do you want to start out by defining IDE for people who might not know?
Yeah, good catch. So an IDE is an integrated development environment, and it is an environment for creating, debugging, and running code, or developing, debugging, all those fun things. I guess there's a couple of facets on this one, because the game actually has there's actually two versions of the game. There's the Unity version of the game, which is the one that runs on your Windows, on your PC, on your tablets, on your consoles, and then there's the WebGL version of the game, which runs, well, as per the name, on the web in your web browser. And so for the first one, for Unity, so the game was actually initially developed in Unity. Sorry, I'm just trying to think through the best way to describe this, because the game is a 2D game, whereas Unity was primarily, and still is primarily, a 3D game engine, but it's an engine that comes with the ability to deploy to multiple platforms from the same code base, which is broadly what we use it for. So it's this, we use it more like a compiler, like a cross-platform compiler, than we use it as Unity is intended to be used. Anyway, so we built our own 2D engine system on top of Unity, and we did that I wish we use C#. So for Unity, the go-to language is C#, and that uses Microsoft Visual Studio, and Visual Studio would be the IDE. So we use Visual Studio and C# for the Unity version of the game, and then the WebGL version of the game is actually built on
Now you got me not remembering what it's called either.
All of a sudden,
it's Pixie, isn't it?
Pixie, yes.
Yeah.
There's a momentary blank. So it's built on top of Pixie.js, and on top of Pixie.js, we actually built a framework that works very, very similarly to the one that we built on the Unity framework, and that way we can actually port the code over with limited differences as we port it over. But our go-to editor for the JavaScript is Sublime text editor, and it's a nice, it's not actually an IDE per se, it's just a text editor with code highlighting, and I believe I use that one, and I think Jacob uses that, and I know a couple of the other developers who are working in the JavaScript have their own sort of personal favorite text editor for that. I think that includes there's a Visual Studio Lite type text editor, which I can't remember. It's called VS Code. And yep, and there's another one. I think it's Notepad++, which I think is Mark's go-to. So
I use Edit Plus because I'm old school.
Yeah, you should really upgrade to Sublime. That one's good.
I should really use something better, but you know.
Yeah. But when it comes to the JavaScript one, because it's primarily just text and the editor actually we're not actually doing compiling and debugging in the text editor, that one becomes a question of preference. So yeah, hopefully I answered all of that question.
And a small follow-up, the Neil Tyson asks, what code repository do we use?
So we've been using Git for some time, and we actually recently upgraded to a locally hosted version of Gitty, which is Git with a cup of tea, hence Git tea. Okay.
Yep. You want to go up one? Because I finally looked into this one.
All right. Here's a question from OG17. And OG17 is asking, why do nerds only have one base feat? The Reddit Q&A says it's from their unusual release, but that doesn't follow.
So I looked this up in the design doc, and they should actually have two. So if they only have one uncommon feat, then that is a bug. They should have a global DPS and a max health increasing feat by default. And then there should be, looks like about 6 rare feats for them as well. So that's what's in the design doc. If that is not what is there, then we're going to have to take a gander at that, because that sounds buggy. Let's see here. So here's a question from Sophia Engval, who asks, why, when you shut off auto progress and then click on a boss level, does the game still move you to the next level when you beat a boss?
Yeah, so when you beat a boss for the first time, the game actually at that point makes a call to the server to say that you've beaten that boss and to reward you the boss loot, which is the chest that comes out and your gems, and potentially whatever other loot you may be receiving from the boss. And at that point, it does always forward you on to the next area. If you were to go back to that and you just left it running there, it would repeatedly kill the boss over and over again. But as part of that process of completing and getting the chest, it actually always pushes you to the next level. Now the question, of course, is why? And I'm not actually 100% sure why we chose to let it, or to make it do that at that point. But
I mean, I think it's for kind of the initial kind of experience that you get when you're first playing the game is like in the very first tutorial is like the first boss is actually quite challenging, and oftentimes in playtesting we'd see people like furiously clicking and like using their ultimate and being like, come on, and then to beat it and then have it go to the next level was much more satisfying than to beat it and then have it just respawn. So I think that's why we kind of leaned on that for the first little bit.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense from just a play experience. In general, though, this is a very sort of edge case situation, because you would be odd to get to the boss, stop, turn off auto progress, and be, I'm capable of beating the boss, so I know I'm going to beat it on the first time and not get bumped back an area. But also I want it to remain looping hereafter. So I do. I agree. I think it's an edge case that we're okay. I don't see. I don't see us making any changes to how that works. Because you will actually get. I think your gold per second is generally it would be better on the next level if you're kind of on the edge of beating a boss. And if you're not on the edge of beating a boss, then you'll probably be able to progress a bunch of levels. And so I think it's kind of better off in most cases. Yeah. Also, I was seeing a player in the chat saying this way you can't double dip on gems from the same boss, but you only get gems that first defeat, even if you were repeatedly killing the same boss.
Yeah, even if you manage to stay in the same level.
That's what that call to the server is.
Yeah, because it actually saves your highest level as the next level once you do that.
Okay.
Let's see here. How's our time? Oh, we're pretty good. Here's a question from Mink Herpera, who asks, would it be possible to have an option to automatically continue an adventure when it's completed? I.e. close the complete adventure pop-up automatically if you're not around to click it.
So I tagged this because this isn't problem, is it? I mean, the dialogue remains up. It should, the game will continue to progress in the background unless somebody's gone ahead and changed something I wasn't aware of.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking as well when I saw this question.
Yeah. So while you will have that dialogue up, the game should progress until you hit your whatever your current wall is, or whatever your current, based on your formation and familiars, etc.
Yeah, I don't think it blocks level ups or anything like that.
So shouldn't be an issue. All
Hopefully
right.
not.
Here's a question that I'm sure many players here in the chat would like to know, and that is, it's from your opponent, and they ask, how do you become a tester?
Yeah, so I think the last round of testing we did for Trials of Mount Tiamat, I think we pulled sort of community leaders and contributors from our Discord. I wouldn't be surprised if we also potentially pull people from Reddit and whatnot, but generally we will reach out when we need testers to people who are active in the community and who are providing good feedback. We like people who are positive and constructive and friendly. So those are kind of the people we generally reach out to when we're looking for help with testing stuff externally. Yep. So yeah, go into the Discord, be active on the Reddit, be friendly and helpful, and that's the way that you get in.
Okay.
Let's see. Do you want to do a couple more here? Looks like we got time for maybe 2 or 3 more.
50. That clock on the wall needs to be fixed on your end. It's off by quite a bit.
I'm looking at the computer one.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, as I mentioned that there's a giant red clock on the wall in the streaming room that Justin's in, and it's ahead by like 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. It says it's 2:53. It is not. It lies. It's like my oven at home. For some reason, I set it to the right time, and over the course of like 4 or 5 weeks, it drifts like 4 minutes ahead of time. It's like so weird.
See, I thought you were talking about the temperature. Mine can't be trusted.
Well, that too. This digital stuff just can't be trusted in any way whatsoever. Let's go back to wood fires and those I think mine's just got a nod.
Anyway, we got some questions to answer. We're running out of time.
Right, I'm just delaying till the end here. Okay, here's a question from Lizard Taste Good. Lizard. Who asks, any update on bypassing Steam to load the game when Steam goes down?
No, we have not looked into that any further.
Not yet.
Okay. Right, here we have a question from Severand0166. And Severand would like to know, in relation to the nerf that is required before the trials are released, is it a nerf to something that is not released or something that is already in game? Did you tell them you were nerfing something?
I did, just earlier on this show.
Oh, I must have been reading questions.
We're nerfing stuff in Trials of Mount Tiamat, so with the new systems. So it's not a nerf of anything that exists currently. It's just some stuff that's overtuned in the new system and needs to be pulled down. Specifically around, there are some abilities in the new system that can increase the damage that your party does, and those can get a little bit too high and a little bit too powerful and allow you to. I think we had one of our internal testers was able to beat Teomat solo on the 2nd or 3rd difficulty, which is not something we necessarily intend. And we don't want it to be too easy to really go really far up the difficulties and just smash Teomat, because she's supposed to be kind of strong. So that's at least one of the things that we're looking at. So nothing to do with the existing game. Don't worry, your champions are safe for now.
Pray that you do not alter them any further.
I'm not even altering the deal, but
Okay, next question here is from Ghostwalker71. Ghostwalker would like to know, would it be possible to place an icon on the portraits on the Switch screen to easily be able to choose a champion based on their alignment without needing to memorize them?
Yeah, I mean, I think something like that would be possible. The problem is it's a little bit of a slippery slope with regards to clutter. So if we add, say, the alignments to the Switch screen to the portraits, then the next thing players will be like, oh, can you add the gender tag, and can you add the class tag, and can you add their race tag, so I can quickly see all of that. And that starts to get a little bit cluttery if we start to add all that stuff. So I kind of highlighted this question because I want to try and think about other ways to accomplish this without necessarily cluttering up the Switch screen or the Switch pop-up. So yeah, it's something that's on our mind. I think it would be cool to kind of be easier to see, like select an ability or something and see the champions that are eligible for that. But I need to put some more thought into it. So yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, Dave, because...
No, I mean, it does seem like it is a slippery slope in terms of how many items end up being on there, because sort of the relevancy of them, they're all relevant in different scenarios. So having maybe, as you were saying that, I was picturing sort of our own sort of nomenclature where certain little symbols on it actually denote the different things in sort of a shorthand. Of course, then everyone would have to memorize what the shorthand meant. This is shorthand for, lawful neutral.
Yeah, I mean, I think people have a good kind of point, is that at least in the normal UI, like when you're, like, you can't actually view the character sheet details without swapping them in. And so it is very tough to kind of find it if you don't really know the champions. Like, you have to literally swap that champion in, then look at their sheet, then swap another one in and look at their sheet.
I mean, we could put like the pertinent details. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. It could be a pop-up, help everyone except for people on console who would shake their fist at us. But
the console swap screen's a little bit different anyway.
Yeah, certainly couldn't put it on it would definitely be easier to get all that information into a tooltip rather than on the icons. In fact, that's kind of what's going on with some of the stuff in the familiar screen redesign right now, right? We actually decluttered those somewhat and put that data in the tooltip rather than having it just on the familiar icon.
So, you guys are really going to love the familiar pop-up redesign. It's really cool, very functional. It looks really slick. Let's see. I think we got time for another question or two here.
Sure. Let's do two.
So here's it's good. We got two more highlighted. Here's a question from Pokybox, who asks, why do monsters sometimes not spawn? Happens seemingly randomly and also for a short bit after coming back from the chest opening screen.
Sure. Well, this is because some of the monsters are actually quite shy and then they bug out. So I think there's two cases here that is being described. And one of them is monsters just in general, not spawning when they're supposed to be spawning. And that's a bug case. And I think there's a handful of ways that can happen. And it is something we haven't managed to properly track down. As for the short bit after coming back from the chest opening screen, there is a timer on the spawns. And I think while you're at the chest opening screen and the game is paused, when you come back from that, the unpause resets that timer in some way that does result in a delay there. That one I remember looking at that probably about 18 months ago, and I can't remember the exact details on it, but I do know there was a timer reset on that caused you have to wait for a full cycle after coming back in some cases for that. Also a bug, but it's one that is less of a serious issue. Yeah.
Do you want to do this last one here, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's last question of the day from Carden, who says, having a connection problem could be quite annoying if you just try to quit the game in that case. The game is pretty broken. Last time I had a longer connection lost at a boss stage. Bosses just rush in and achievements pop up. Could it be possible to just run the game offline and sync the game the next time you're online?
Yeah, so this is one of those...
That's mainly the question. Is it possible to run offline and then sync when you get internet again?
Yeah, and the general answer to that is no. I know we looked into this in some detail when we were setting up to port to the Nintendo Switch, and one of the concerns around that was the ability to say, take your Switch on an airplane. That's a thing people do, right? Go on airplanes. Anyway, and so looking into the details around that, we did find that there was a significant number of issues with being offline and features that just wouldn't work. And so while there's maybe a little bit of leeway, and there's maybe there's a little bit of additional leeway we could put into the actual levels, something that detects that, hey, actually you've lost your connection and we actually just have to hold, because when you get to a boss, for example, it does have to save at the point at which you defeat the boss to know what it's going to give you in terms of loot. And that was something that we at length discussed, putting in for an offline mode, something that, for example, could calculate simulate in advance all of the various loots that you were going to get, and then pull those out of a queue that the client already knows. And we also discussed similar things around that for chests, because of course we were trying to see if we could get a mode that worked in offline for a significant period of time. But it did start to become one of those problems that once you had the actual results of the loot, and at any point at which you could choose to open a different combination of, for example, chests, broke what the next options could potentially be. And then, of course, the boss saving and the boss loot. Yeah, it became at that point it became a client trust issue, and there's a lot of problems around being able to trust the client to actually sort of say what happened versus asking the server what's happening now. I'm not sure that I'm providing exactly an articulate response to that. I don't know, Justin, if you had any further thoughts on the issues we ran into at that point, because I know they were numerous.
It becomes a real challenge, especially with like new systems that might need to ping the server from time to time. For example, the new Trials Mount Teomat feature could potentially have, it just becomes a thing where every single time we add a new feature, there's, or a new system, there's just another thing that we have to redesign around or design around in such a way that could be detrimental for people who do have access all the time. Like, it kind of forces our design choices in a way that's not really ideal for the main game.
Okay. Well, that is definitely all the time we have for.
It is, yeah. If we didn't get to your question this week, don't worry, you'll have another opportunity. We will be live again at this same time next week. Before we sign off, though, we'd like to thank our tireless mods. Today it was Sasha and Mars, according to what I just checked into. So thanks, guys.
Awesome. And of course, thanks to all of you for hanging out, watching the stream, and enjoying the game, because without you, no one here would get to do what we do.
And we like what we do.
All right. That's it. We're done for now. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, all.